From the great halls of their house, there are assembled three who hope to one day be the world's greatest driving heroes. Created from the cosmic legends of the universe comes our team captain, the Vision Bill Fisher. There's soon to be Wonder Woman, Vicki Fisher, our Captain Marvel, head flight trainee, Jennifer Scripchuck, and our Batman, master of tools, gadgets, and all things mechanical, our mild-mannered soon-to-be billionaire, Alan Danvers. Their mission? To fight injustice, share what is right and wrong, to get you out of your house and come out racing with them, and serve all mankind. They are the Garage Heroes in Training Team.
Welcome to the Garage Heroes in Training podcast. I'm going to be your host for this episode, and I am not by myself this time. Who do I have?
I'm Jennifer.
I'm Vicki.
We've got everybody here in person for one of the very few times we're doing an in-person podcast. Who knew? Hopefully it sounds better. We'll see. Never know until you edit. So, what has been going on at the Garage Heroes in Training garage compound while I was gone?
We have been very, very busy. So Jennifer and Jim had just purchased a new driving RV, and they brought it up to New Jersey. Pennsylvania. I don't even know what state I'm in. I am so freaking tired. Up to the air hangar in PA, and parked it outside the air hangar, and is staying here for a week. So the hangar's been open so far for 3 days. Yeah, 3 days.
Yeah, since Saturday.
And first day and night that we were here, we had purchased new shelving, and we organized and did a whole new layout in the hangar just to make it way more functioning. Pull some more stuff out of hangar 1 to move it to hangar 2, which is our new compound. And after that, the second day, we started working on the cars. Our job has been just to do a little bit of tidy and cleanup, and now today we had just rolled out the truck, the race truck for our new retheming.
So, Jennifer, how is the new RV?
The new RV is fabulous. It's wonderful. It's great parked out here because, there's a bathroom and a fridge. Yeah, it's great. Very comfy.
And you have the whole airport to yourself because the airport's being repaved. So no flights in, no flights out. I'm assuming if it was an emergency, somebody could try to land, but who knows? So it's pretty quiet around here. So we're taking advantage of it and squirming around. So I was not able to partake in this weekend's festivities, but exactly what did you do and what should you have done?
Right now, the team is installing, modifying a little bit of the cooling system on the BMW E36. And we have installed a fan. We're doing switches for that. We're running electrical right now. Let me see what else we've been doing. Finishing up on the brakes, finishing up on the other little jobs right now. Just trying to sew up and button up some stuff. Right now, we were at a bottleneck with some of the stuff that we were doing. We can't finish up the 86 until, the E36. We were trying to get to the E36 because the front end is torn apart. Because we're doing electrical work on it. So once electrical work's done, we can get inside and do, the fire suppression and, the new belts and all that kind of, interior stuff. But we have to get the new electrical run. And now rolling the truck outside, we have just started to sand all that. We basically took the whole thing apart and sanding everything and getting it ready. We've also fixed the sway bar in the back. And right now we're addressing the fuel cell issues. So we're correcting that. Today we had gone out and gotten the new paint colors. They're being mixed. And the new design is getting ready to go on. And also, we also have a new vinyl cutter. So we're going to be taking advantage of that also.
So Jennifer, I'm not sure if you were here the last time when we started this, but we have a new way of keeping track of what we're doing and what we're not doing.
I love it. They have this wonderful tape system. It's the blue tape, and they write they put it on the windshield, and they write what needs to be done on the car, and it's horizontal.
Horizontal's to do,
and when you're done, you put it vertical
and sign it.
Yeah, or initial it. That way, if something needs to be addressed with something you've already done, we know who did it, and you can go back and ask them. So it's a really, really great system. I was pretty impressed when I got here.
I am thinking this is a very good working system because the paper never disappears.
Post-its don't fall off.
Post-its don't fall off. Things don't get erased. It's all there now. As we start tightening things up, we can move those tape strips, which is basically just painter's tape and silver Sharpie. We can start categorizing them and putting them in certain orders of things that have to get done. So this is definitely the one system that sticks with the car, and it's usually either on a windshield or the side window, but it's the one system that seems to be working for us right now.
And as we have demonstrated in the past, we need a system to keep track of what's done and what's not done, like things like torque lug nuts.
Yes.
Weird ideas like that.
Which Brad had actually put on there because we were discussing torquing and lug nut issue that we've had on 3 or 4 cars right now. And that was one thing he had done was Bill had accidentally put the rear tires on backwards. So we did that, but he says, I don't have the torque wrench because Bill had taken it to an HPDE. We had a manual one. We didn't have the really good one. He says, he put torque tires on that car, which was, okay, that's what we need to do. Just because we have so many hands on all the cars at different times of the week that it seems to be absolutely working.
So every time I park a car in our hangar, the first tape that goes up there is torque lug nuts. So hopefully it doesn't move.
Yep.
So that's where we're at. What else do we have going on?
Your HPDE, Bill.
I know.
We're not quite there yet.
We're not quite there. You're stealing thunder.
Okay.
Let's see. What else?
We have new friends. So we have new friends on our team. I would say a new friend and team associates, which have become very helpful here at the hangar. We're starting to get to know our hangar neighbors. And through the place that we actually does some of our tire balancing and sometimes our fluids and safety checks, we end up meeting a gentleman named Randy Duckworth. And Randy Duckworth is a local mechanic to us now. His brother has a hangar behind us, and he is a mechanic, which is awesome. And he does have HPDE experience, which is equally as awesome. And he does I think it's level 3 racing with Porsches.
So he's a Porsche Club guy, and he's been doing HPD 3s with them, and he's looking to get back into racing and start racing. And then, somebody said, hey, do you know this crazy team up here? And he's like, no, and then, he came over and he said, he's got lots of toys and lots of skill and lots of tools and knowledge, and we have lots of broken cars that need help, and
lots of tools
and lots
medium
of tools,
knowledge,
lots of tools that he makes fun of, and we thought it was a good blend. And Randy so far has been helping out a little bit and getting yelled at for being here way too much, which we love that part. Well, not the yelling part, but we love the help part. And
who's yelling at him?
He's got the coolest tools. He has the coolest tools and gadgets and stuff that he brings down. Like, I just realized what a pressurized brake bleeder was. And, oh my gosh, you just cut all of our time in like fractions. I mean, by a fraction. So,
is it easy enough that I could do it?
Absolutely.
Well,
yeah, we'll question that. But anyway, through Randy, he has been introducing us to some more people on the airfield, and one of them is a gentleman named Dennis. And Dennis works on aircraft, but he is very handy with metal, and he has metal contacts, and he knows where to find all the stuff that we're looking for, which I did find a name, by the way. I will tell you.
Well, you can tell the podcast people.
I think it's
Nardco.
Nardco.
Okay.
It might be in Dunmore. So he says whatever we need, he's quite sure that they're going to be able to supply it, including our tubing and pipe fitting for roll cages. Mm-hmm. And he's got contacts. And he actually helped us do some metal work on our car for our electrical stuff. So, and he was happy to do it. I think they're just all in also. They kind of love coming down here and hanging out at the hangar.
and laughing at us, making a fool of ourselves.
Which
while we're
ju-
trying.
They just laugh at Bill.
So many people have stopped by in the past 3 days, and not one of them have laughed at you. Not one. Nope.
Nope.
Notice I wasn't here for the past 3 days.
They do know your limitation, though.
Yes, they do. I'm double teamed by the Wilson sisters. Anyway, anything else with the car resuscitation plans? Anything on the organization?
Well, as we said before, we're really excited. We're going to start off with the truck, and we're really, really excited. And again, we are...
Describe the truck.
Okay, so the race truck is a...
2003 Chevy S10 with an Isuzu Ombre on top of it.
Yes, so since we have all this time to work on it, we're actually kind of pulling it apart and doing it right. So we're kind of repainting the steel, tending to paint finishes, and kind of working on the fuel cell and making sure that cage that it holds is done up really well. So while we were doing that, we decided that we're also going to remove the slats on the back side of our truck, because basically it's just a front end cap. The back end is just very light wood slats with diamond plate in the back end. It makes it very, very light back there, but the fuel cell kind of bounces out a little bit. And also it makes it a little crazy when you drive because you lose fuel. But kind of opening it up and going to do a really nice paint job on it. We already have the plan laid out for that. And we're going to really, really do it nice.
So we need to get this. So how long till the truck? Is the truck like a couple days away? Is it?
I think that.
Oh no, we're knocking that bitch out tomorrow.
We're gonna at least start knocking out the whole prepping, papering, and primering. We're actually going to do a little bit of work on the interior too.
Yes.
To kind of dress it up a little bit.
Okay.
We have the time. We're actually thinking about staining the wood slats a little bit into like a nice darker color.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Mm-hmm. I actually have the stain sitting at home.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. It's going to look very nice when it's done. Plus, yeah, so we definitely have a plan laid out. Our scenario is that now that we have the vinyl cutter, is that we're just going to create a generic car. We're going to create a generic mess? Is that what you said?
Every time I use the vinyl cutter, it just creates a big pile of mess.
Yeah. So what we decided to do is that we're just going to do a very big base paint, and then
Yes.
and then we're just going to decal and do stuff over top of that. So we have the option to kind of hold this the paint coloring and the design for a year or so, maybe 2 years, and then we can actually retheme over that with that color. I hate to really lock everything in at the moment, to have to redo things again 2 years later.
Okay, so in our past, we have done shaker can, rattle can. We have done, you're killing me. You say shaker can every single time, so it kills me. So we've done rattle can paint. We've done basically spray dip.
She was laying there.
We've done real paint with an HVLP system. So what are your thoughts on what we have done in the past, and what are we going to do on this one?
Well, what is it called? Diplo? Is that what that stuff was called?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a nightmare.
Why?
Because the Diplo. Okay, so this was our first time ever using stuff.
Oh yeah.
And the theory was, hey, we could just pull it off, and that way we don't have to strip the car. We could just peel it like skin, sunburned skin. But yeah, it ended up really kind of being a nightmare. So I would never go that route again. Why? Because it does wear, it holds the grease, it punctures and peels, and one of the little techniques that I've picked up along the way is that sometimes you have a really difficult time locking in your numbers until you finally get to a point when you find a number that nobody is so obscure that nobody really uses. So what happens is that if you keep pulling the numbers off your car to have to change them, the type of Diplo this was, which again, we were idiots for using it, but what did we know? This is the first time ever dealing with a car. Is that as you're peeling numbers off, the Diplo would also peel off the car, so you start having strip stuff. One technique that I have found that is starting to work for that is, instead of having to worry about constantly putting numbers on, is that on our cars is that, well, now we have a vinyl cutter, but before we just actually had a white painted block on our car, which we could just stick our numbers on there and they would be seen.
Plastic dip.
Plastic dip. What a night. Never use this. That is nuts. It's for accents. But so shaker cans were rattle cans. Rattle cans were okay if you had the right attachment on top of it. And it actually had a sprayer attachment that you can put onto it and use it like a spray gun.
A handle.
Yes, it was a handle. That made things a lot easier when I was painting the second time around, when I was doing the truck. But it's costly. And now we actually this year have bought a proper system. We do not right now have the compressor for it yet, but I think we're going to be lining something up or figure. I mean, we have a compressor, but I don't know if it's going to be able to handle what we need it to do. But then again, we're not doing that much, so we'll have to see what it can take. And that's, so I would have to say that I would go for the system where it's going to actually use the least amount of paint in the gallons with a proper sprayer system. And we actually picked up the solvent to clean
Real car paint.
real car paint. Yeah,
Like the Capri.
yeah, it actually works out cheaper anyway.
So we're using an HVLP, high volume, low pressure painting system. We have to get we have our eyes set on a used compressor that's available. If it's good, if it's not good, we'll buy something else. We haven't got a chance to see it yet. So that's kind of the plan right now. Hopefully we'll be able to get that tomorrow maybe. And then you guys can rock and roll with the paint. We can't go into the theme.
Nope.
Is there anything else we can get into?
The painting's gone, which made me a little sad sanding that off today.
We do have pictures though.
I know, but
Yeah.
it was fun.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
The Bob Ross painting for our penalty from New
they
Jersey.
had to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was good, but we have pictures. We have pictures to actually post, which I think we're going to actually create a wall of all of our car designs, which I think would be great.
That would be a great idea.
It would be really a great idea. I know.
So I proposed that we buy another door and take the door off and the hood, but Vicki overruled me, so whatever. I'm gonna get in trouble this week anyway, so what's the big deal if I get in trouble more? Anything else on the home front before we get into my travels?
No, we've just kind of set up camp outside the hangar, and this is where we've been living for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, how was your trip been down here so far, Jen?
It's been fine. I mean, just chilling, hanging out, and working all day, and
Tools of the week. What were some of the favorite tools that we had? The grinder.
That grinder, that was fun. Yeah, definitely the grinder for me.
Yeah, the grinder with the what is it? The wheels, the wire wheels.
Wire wheels, wire brushes.
Yeah. Although, yeah.
Very satisfying.
So Jen took one of our wire brush attachments to the grinder, and I think it surrendered probably about an hour before Jennifer stopped using it. I think there's like one little straggly piece of wire that was going around it.
And they're all stuck in her leg.
Yeah, it kind of looks like one of those COVID crew cuts that people do to themselves. It doesn't look good. It does not look good.
But the truck looks good.
And then Vicki learned for the second time that you buy the consumable sanding and wear items from Harbor Freight as opposed to buying them from the big box store. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it was definitely pricier, but
Jen's just going to use it up.
Yeah, Jen's going to use it up. I bought two, but next time I will do Harbor Freight, obviously. But my only concern is that last time I went over to Harbor Freight, everything was picked over. There was like hardly anything on the shelves. So I was afraid of going there, and I already had to make a major run at the depot. So I figured I would just grab them there.
All right, so we're rocking and rolling. Truck should be done this week. Are we going to start on the BMW?
We're going to get the base of everything on the truck, minus the decaling and the fine tuning of it. And then we're probably going to start surface sanding the BMW, yes.
So the BMW is going to be started and the truck's going to be done.
We're hoping, yes.
Mostly.
All right, very well. We will see you next week. Tune in next time. Next bat channel, same bat time. Well, we never do the same bat time. We've released a podcast on every single day of the week so far. So, what?
Every day of the week?
I've released a podcast on every single day over the time.
Okay.
Sometimes it comes out on Monday. Sometimes it comes out on Tuesday. Anyway, all right. So we did race prior to COVID. Vicki and I went out with Mental to Laguna Seca and raced with Lucky Dog this year. But we did have our first post-COVID interruption race siesta. I was able to go attend a HPDE with the NASA Great Lakes region. I went to Mid-Ohio for the first time and had a very good time. So I don't know if you guys listened to the podcast. So I went over what we did on Saturday, but we can go over the whole thing if you guys have any questions.
Okay, so Saturday, what took place on your Saturday morning?
So Saturday morning, I found out that the one tire on the passenger rear was a little low. So I was concerned that we had just gotten new tires mounted on those rims, and I was concerned that we might have a slow leak. It turned out it was fine. So I ended up adjusting the pressure with the new tires at the new temperature and gave it a try, and it turned out that our tire pressures were pretty good. So for our car, we were running Hankook RS4s, and we changed it from a staggered stance, 225 in the rear and 215 in the front, to a 225 all around. The car handled a lot better, especially on turn-in, and it was a lot more balanced. So it would turn in a little sharper, and it was a lot more balanced in that the front would push almost at the same time the rear would turn out or rotate. So the car was fairly neutral. It wasn't like one end was loose and the other end was still stuck. So I liked it a whole lot better. The thing that I learned through the week, though, was that my preparation, even though I did a lot more than I usually do for a new race track, wasn't enough. Okay, so by that I mean, when we go to a Lemons race, or we go to a Lucky Dog race, or we go to an AAR race or a Champ Car race, wherever we're at, when we go out for a race stint, we're usually out there for 2 hours-ish, hour on the short side.
Mm-hmm.
And you can learn the track just by going over and over and over and over and over. But when you're going out for a 15 or a 20-minute session with the HPD instructors leading and things like that, it's difficult because the first half of the session you're focused on the drill, and then you may get 2 or 3 laps, and it's not enough time at my stage or the way that I do things to learn the track. It took me all the way into the middle of Sunday to where I felt like almost comfortable on that track.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is just the way we do things with our endurance racing. It's forced some bad habits that I noticed as we got into the HPDE. So that was one thing I noticed on Saturday.
What was your bad habit?
I'm sorry, but I have lots of bad habits. But
I will vouch for that.
Yes, I'm sure you will. So I'll get into the bad habits shortly. But so Saturday starts out with a pre-meeting we had. We might as well do the COVID impact, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was going to ask, how'd they handle that?
Okay. So COVID related changes, because I've been to a few NASA events with the different organizations. I've been to Northeast, I've been to Mid-Atlantic, and I've been to Great Lakes. So the way that they structure things, Friday is a racing day and a tech day. So you'll have various racing series going, and then Saturday and Sunday, that's when they have their HPDEs. And what they'll do is they'll blend the HPDEs in with the racing session. So you may have one session be a race, the next session be an HPDE, and it could go 2 HPDEs in a row. It doesn't really matter. and they just kind of blend it. So you have a larger pool of people, plus you have different interests. You have people who are there for racing, you have people that are there for HPDE, so you get to talk to a whole bunch of people, and there's all different levels, and it's kind of nice, and I like that. What they did was, this was the first NASA, I believe, nationwide, but it definitely was the first NASA Great Lakes where they had it after COVID. So what they had to do was, all right, so you had to fill out a form, and you weren't allowed in without filling this out, and I think it was for tracing. It was pretty funny because when they sent out the email saying you had to do this for racing purposes, I think it was a typo or an autocorrect where they changed the word to be racing instead of tracing. It was kind of funny. So you had to do that, and then every time you went through the gate, they would take a temperature test of you to make sure that you weren't running a fever.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So that was one of the things they did at the gate, and if you had a fever, you weren't allowed in. Now, I don't know what would have happened if I got a fever and my trailer was inside. I don't know how they would have handled that, but anyway. Anytime you were on the property, except if you had a helmet and you were by yourself in a car, you had to wear a mask. Social distancing was not optional. So one thing that it did impact was you weren't able to interact as well with the people. There were some people who it started to get a little slack towards the end of the week, but they were sending out reminders to everybody over the text message that that was not acceptable. So they were trying to do that. And then NASA usually has meals and get-togethers on Saturday night especially. They had to cancel that, so you weren't allowed to do that. And basically, they just want to keep everybody separate. One of the casualties of the COVID, at least for this HPDE, was there was no HPDE 1. That's the lower level for NASA, the entry level. In HPDE 1, you tend to have a instructor in the right seat with you, or sometimes the instructor will drive for you, and that's 100% of the time. So at this point, they either couldn't or weren't allowed to have that with the COVID separation, because you can't be in the car and 6 feet apart unless the car is very big. And most of the cars were sports cars, so they're not 6 feet wide. So with that, HPDE 1 got canceled, and HPDE 2, they typically have 50% of the time, like once or twice for the weekend, you'll have an instructor in car with you, and they didn't do that except for one exception. The only people who could drive were in the same car. You had to be a level 4 or an instructor, and you had to be related. That was the only way they were letting 2 people out. So usually you can go out with any HPDE 4 and do a ride along and things like that, which is highly encouraged and very helpful, but not allowed at this time. Maybe it'll change, maybe it won't, don't know. The other thing that got sacrificed was there was no classroom. So the classroom sessions were changed in that usually you have a classroom with every time with HPDE 1 and every other time with HPDE 2, where you actually go over like a PowerPoint presentation. Instead of having a group of 30 HPDE 2s in a classroom, they decided to break these session of 30 drivers into 3 sessions of 10, and the subgroups met elsewhere in different spots. The problem was there wasn't 3 classrooms to meet in, and it was open air, so you didn't have a projector, so you couldn't do the classrooms. But it was very helpful, especially our instructor for our session. He was very, you could tell he was trying to make up for the lack of the classrooms and being very detailed and very descriptive and very helpful. And our debriefs were going 45 minutes to an hour. So they were very in-depth and detailed. Usually a debrief is like a 5 or 10 minute thing. Very good instruction, as always, with NASA Great Lakes. We had a really good time with that. I'm trying to think if there was any more changes as a result of the COVID. No right seat, groups of 10. They still ran the drills. So every other session there was a drill that you had to do and a drill that you had to pass. And we'll get into the drills as time goes by. And I think that was pretty much it as far as the impacts for COVID. I think Ohio as a state is much more wide open than what we're used to here in Pennsylvania. The stores were open, everybody was out, pretty much no masks. The restaurants were kind of, I think they were 10 or 20 limit people. Otherwise you could eat outside. it was a much more relaxed state, and you could tell when you crossed over from Pennsylvania into Ohio. Don't know if that's good or bad. I'm just here reporting the facts, ma'am.
We'll find out.
Yeah, I guess we will. So, but in the end, the impact was really there was no HPDE ones. So that's going to be a bit of a problem for us in that our next HPDE schedule is for Can't Catch Me, I'm a Ginger Man, where Jennifer and Vicki are going to be in HPDE 1. They've been registered for a while, and I'm going to be in HPDE 2. So hopefully there's an HPDE 1. If there's not, you guys are capable of driving in HPDE 2. I'd like to do the classwork with you ahead of time. The only problem is then we need 3 cars because we're all in the same sessions. So we got to figure something out with that. Maybe I'll just take the HPDE 2 in the tow vehicle, the tow pig.
The tow pig.
So how was the drive in the 86?
So 86, well, it was much better. I think the last time I went in the 86, Chris made suggestions that the front camber wasn't enough, so I put in some camber bolts, increased it by 1.5 degrees camber, changed the toe a little bit, and the car seemed to, and we changed tires. We were using the same tires that we use in our endurance racing cars just to be consistent, and also widened the front tire by 10 millimeters, which is almost half an inch. And it made a big difference. I think the car handled a lot better. There was 3 cars that were easily faster than I was in my HPD group. One was a McLaren 570, which is to no...
Sorry, I spit my beer out.
Yeah. So, to the surprise of absolutely nobody, the McLaren was able to pass my Toyota 86. I think it had 3 times as many horsepower and a little more tech and a lot better tires. So that car was out there, and it was quite fast. There was another, I think it was a 32 generation GTR, also nicknamed Godzilla, and it was quite fast. And then there was a Z06 C7 Camaro, which I think he had more horsepower at each wheel than I had in my entire car, and his wheels were about the width of my car. So he passed me very, very quickly. Good driver. He was a fun guy, and then obviously the instructors. But it was good. Once I started to get the hang of the track, I was getting gradually faster. You get faster throughout the week, and I was able to eventually keep up with. And I don't know if I passed him because he let me pass him, or I passed him because I was faster. But I was able to pass my instructor. He was in a Mazda Miata, so he has agreed that he may be coming on. So we may have the usual that we do with our HPDE teachers coming on and picking on us, and seeing how that goes. So he may take a few whacks at me, and all of them will be justified. So the structure of the event, though, on Saturday was we went out for the first session, about 20 minutes. We did test laps, or it was lead follow with everybody. So you had one instructor in the front and 10 cars following, and then second group, remember we were in 3 groups of 10. And then the next one, we did 2 test laps with the instructor, and then the rest of it was free. So we had free time out there. Then we went to lunch. Now during lunch, I noticed I wasn't able to keep up with the track, and I wasn't quite getting my turns right. So I reviewed all my notes and my track maps and things like that. So that did help a lot on our next one.
What are the track maps?
All right, so the track maps. Everybody's got a track map, and everybody sees a track map. Now, one of the weird things about Mid-Ohio is that there's actually 2 courses there. There's one with a chicane and one without a chicane. So after the first turn, each turn has 2 different numbers. So what I do for every race that we go to is I'll go through the track map, and I'll go through the numbers, and then I'll look through videos on the internet, usually at Racers 360 with Dion, who was on the podcast earlier, and take notes on the turns, where to do turn in, where to do apex, where to do brakes, where to come off the brakes, where to try to track out to, and what is it an early apex, late apex, and I tried to do that. The problem I had with Mid-Ohio wasn't that there were so many turns, it was hard to do. The problem was a lot of the turns looked similar to me. And not knowing exactly what to do for each turn matters. So when I did at lunch, I had an extra hour. I went through and I looked at what I had on my notes versus what I was doing on the track, and it cleared up 2 or 3 turns for me, so it made things a little bit better. So in addition to iRacing the track, in addition to looking at the track maps, in addition to the notes, I still had to go look at them again. So it does help. If you guys want, I could throw something on the internet webpage and we could show what I do. So after that, I was much more comfortable on the track, but I still wasn't fully comfortable. So it was the next session, we were doing a drill where we were out in a group of 10 cars. 10 cars? Yeah, I think it was 10 cars. And what you had to do is you had to go around the track for 2 laps. On the first lap, the instructor led everybody on the left-hand side of the track, and you had to pretend there was a phantom car on your right the entire way. So you had to have a car, fake car, phantom car, next to you for the entire way. So if you were on the left-hand side, when you were making a left-hand turn, you could stay on the inside apex, but you couldn't go out because there was a car there. And when you were doing a right-hand turn, you couldn't apex because there's a car there, a fake car, but it's there. In level 3, they actually do it with 2 cars. But in level 2, they do it with a fictional car. So that went pretty well. We came in and everybody's like, the instructor was like, so what was that like? And I was like, well, it's just like a normal weekend for us when we go racing, because I go around turns. I know there's a apex somewhere, but I can't get to it because there's somebody in my way. So, I mean, you got 140 cars on the track. There's, the apex is something you see and hear about, but you don't ever get to use. So not the best drill for us as an endurance racing team with lots of cars and lots of experience in going offline, but it was still good to do, and everybody in the class seemed to really like it. It's not the favorite drill of the weekend, but it was quite fun. And then at the end of the day, we were out for free sessions, and that was the first day. So,
Yep. How did you manage your Sunday?
Well, as usual, I got the large chocolate. I like strawberry topping. If they have bananas, it's very nice. Why make it a Sunday when you can have a banana split, in my imagination? So, usual stuff, nothing fancy.
So, what did they do? Did you start your classes early and then you went out when?
Oh, that Sunday. Sorry, I did the E and not the Y. Anyway, so Sunday we met for a brief kickoff meeting in the morning, get everybody up to speed. We had one person change their car, so they had to get reteched. That was at like 8 in the morning or so. And then we had 4 more sessions. Like I said, Mid-Ohio, there's 2 different track layouts. One with a big, long straightaway. That's the pro course. And then there's one where the straightaway gets circumvented, and instead of going straight into what is a 180-degree turn, you go into a chicane and then into the 180-degree turn. So totally different track at that part, and the rest of the track's all the same. So we went out and we did a parade lap with 2 laps with the instructor showing us what to do, and then we did free track, and then the next one was wide open free. You just went out there and tried to do things. What they wanted to do was they wanted to have I'm going to start liking girls soon. Apparently my voice is cracking. I'm Bobby Brady. What they wanted to do is they wanted to have the fast cars in the front and slower cars, or the lower horsepower cars, in the back. I think some of the people were a little confused with that because the first car was a relatively low horsepower car. The second car was a Z06. The third car was a relatively low horsepower car. I was kind of sitting in the middle and just looking at this going, somebody did not listen to the instructions, but that's okay. We still had a good time. And
were there as many people at this one as there usually are at the events, or did you think that there were less people that because of the COVID?
Racing wise or HPDE wise?
HPDE wise.
So there wasn't at the HPDE 1 crowd. They weren't there, so there was less there. I'd say we're probably a little light from normal, but it was, I'd say maybe we were exactly 30, and maybe it's usually closer to 40, but it wasn't a big difference.
Oh, okay. All right.
So there was that. Then we went to lunch, and then the favorite drill of the weekend by just about everybody there was we broke up into groups of 5. So there would be 1 instructor, 5 drivers. There was one group with 4 just because numbers. And what you would do is the instructor would set a pace. Let's say it's 80% of full speed pace. And the instructor sets the pace. You get the 4 cars or 5 cars lined up right behind him. And then the last person in the train has to go pass everybody. You stay first lap you stayed left, second lap you stayed right. And then you have to pass on the right. And as soon as that person starts to turn in, the person at the back turns in. There's a non-politically correct track term for this, but we will go with it's a train. And that was kind of fun. The one thing that I did notice was there was a difference in style with the people coming from the back. There was the very polite, they'd get in there and then they'd kind of slowly blend in right behind the instructor car, between the second car. And then there was the boy who grew up in New Jersey who blows by, gets in there, and boom, gets in there. No problem. I'll make my own room. If you don't back up, you'll find me. There was an equal split of 3 and 3, or 3 and 2, and it was quite funny because you get the 3 of us were in one group, like in order, and then the other 2 were a little slower. So you'd have the one go, and then the other go, and then whoop, 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 and then one go, and then the other goes. It was quite funny. And
it's like that little Microsoft thing, little train thing.
That's right. Yeah. Very nice.
Yeah, so it was interesting, and then everybody seemed to like that. And then after that, they let us go free. And then the last session, I think they let us go free, do anything you want. I think we had 30 minutes of track time. Just go out there and blow off steam and have a good time.
Did anybody wreck? Were there any accidents?
A couple, nothing major. What? There's always a couple. There's races going on. Some people lost engine oil. Some people lost, nothing major. I mean, I didn't see anything major. No major damage, but a couple of people blew engines.
Not like hitting a wall at Watkins Glen.
Not like hitting a wall at Watkins Glen. No.
Yeah.
The one thing that was ideal for me, probably highlights of the weekend, were the final 2 sessions. So when we were doing the one where the train, you keep changing spots, when we came around the starting line, right when we changed for the second lap, end of the second lap going into the third lap, you switch to free track. So now I've got the instructor in front, and I'm the person who was coming from the back of the train in front. So now it's open track in front of the instructor, and I'm the person right behind. So I get to chase the instructor for the next 3 laps. Generally keeping up with him. There's a section of the track with multiple turns where I'm not anywhere close to being where I should be. And then there's sections of the track where I'm actually pretty good. And you could tell because I would catch up on the faster sections for me, but on the slower sections he would pull away. And then we ended up playing with that for a while. And then we repeated it again with a different car in the open track at the end. So at the end, I was actually starting to see what I wasn't doing. And there was a couple areas of the track that just didn't make sense to me, and I was having trouble keeping up with. And one of them was going down the straightaway into the chicane. In the cars that we're on, we're not going fast enough. We don't have enough horsepower to keep going because it's slightly uphill and it's not that far. You're supposed to, in a Miata, you're supposed to just turn right into the chicane, go around apex on the inside left and the outside right, and go right into the 180 degree called the keyhole. I, for the life of me, could not go flat without braking to make that first right. It seemed like I was going too fast to make a right-hand turn, but I kept pushing. And then the other one was I was having trouble with the brake points. So at the end.
Sounds like it was a great weekend.
It was. There was a couple other drills that they had. They have in level 2, they have a red flag drill where they'll just randomly throw a red flag and you have to know what to do. And then throughout the weekend, in order for you to pass from level 2 to level 3, they will do a black flag drill on your car. And if you don't see the black flag, you will not be allowed to go to level 3.
Did you see the flag, Bill?
Unfortunately, I have experience in seeing black flags. So this was nothing new to me. So yes, I did see that. So going into the weekend, I had some goals, right? And I think that one was to learn as much as possible. One was to concentrate on vision, try to make sure my vision was where it should be and where it should be. looking at and how far it should be looking, and then turn in late for the apex, because that was a problem I have, is that my natural predisposition is to turn in early and apex middle. So I wanted to turn in late and apex late. And then the other ones that the weakest part of my driving, I think, is involving the brakes, either the application of the proper force or the way that I come off the brakes. So that was the other thing I was trying to work on. So in the end, it turned out that apparently I was quite successful in my goal, because the feedback I got at the end of the HPDE was that I needed to be more consistent in the lines, especially at my turn-in points. But I tended to be late in apexing and late in my turn-in. And I explained to him that what I was trying to do was brake my early. He's like, well, you have succeeded, sir. You are way past where you should be. And again, we're talking about their braking into turn 1 and turn 2. So that was fun. So I got to do that. The one thing that I would say that I found to be helpful, and it's just a matter of having the discipline to do it. The sessions where I had time and thought about it, that I could say, what do I want to accomplish in the next session? 1 or 2, maybe 3 things that I want to accomplish in the next session, were dramatically better than the sessions where I just went in and did what they wanted me to do. So not only should you do that, but you should think about what you're doing, what you did, and what you should be working on. So hint to the
goals. Gotta have goals.
So what do I need to do moving forward? I think my concentration on the late apexing helped a lot. I accomplished it, maybe even too much. I had a little issue with the brakes at the end of the big straightaways. I had to be able to trust the brakes a little bit more. Threshold braking, for instance, I was starting at 500 board. I then went to 400 board. I probably should be at 300 board, but when I got to 400 board, I did one step. I went to 375, and then I should go and see where it is. I probably could get 300 or maybe less, and that would be a big difference. There's a couple other turns that are a puzzle to me. I still need to work on those and figure out why I have trouble with two different turns. I can get into the turn numbers and the design, but if you don't know the track, it doesn't really matter, and everybody gets bored. So there's 2 turns that I still need to work on, and the next time I go, taking input from the instructor, I'm going to be working on the line. I'm going to be working on the apex. Again, I've got to get locked in at the nice apex and be consistent. And then the 2 things that I noticed that were implied by the instructor's feedback that are bad habits that I've generated from Lemons. Again, in Lemons, we don't get to see the apex. We don't get to see the line. We basically work around it and try to do the best we can and just get used to, if I'm way offline, I go at 90%. If I'm kind of offline, I go at 95%. And you're just trying to stay as fast as you can. With that being the case, what I tend to do at a turn is I tend to wing it. I don't care where my turn in is, because I never get to do it the same twice. I don't have good visual landmarks, and I don't really look at where I should be for certain things, and I just kind of do it by feel as to how close to the line I am and what I should do. And I think I need to firm that up, especially in an HPDE environment where there's not so many cars and you can practice the racing line. So that's one thing that I need to work on. And then I need to prep a little bit better, maybe a little more iRacing. I'm going to definitely know Gingerman better than I knew Mid-Ohio coming in for our next HPDE. And then the other thing that we talked about was the personal goals each session. I think that's what we're going to need to do, and try to firm things up and get things a little bit more dialed in.
Sounds like a good weekend.
It was a good weekend. The only downside to the weekend was 2. We had the prep side, which we can't go to a racetrack without having a prep fiasco. When we were changing the brake pads from the street pads to the race pads, Liam and I found out that the caliper bolts, the part that holds the clamshell over the pads, that's held on by two bolts, only had 1 bolt, so that's a problem. I I quickly talked to both Alan and Chris, and they both laughed at me when I said, "Is this a big deal?" And they're like, "Yeah." So, but we found a screw for that, and then on the way back, the Route 80 gas stations decided to close at 10 p.m. And when you're leaving the track at 6 and you're in mid-Ohio trying to get back to eastern Pennsylvania, not being able to get gas after 10 is a bit of a problem. So it came really, really close to Bill parking at a gas station and sleeping at the gas pump waiting for it to open in the morning. But I ended up getting back in here around 2 o'clock in the morning. So long day.
Mm-hmm.
I woke up at 4 something, went back to sleep till slept in till 6, and didn't get home till 2. So long day, but great day. So the plan is for the two of you to come to Ginger Man.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very excited.
Yep. More importantly is that we got to finish getting all these cars ready for tomorrow.
Well, why are you standing here podcasting when you can be out there sanding? Beach party?
So tired.
I guess we're ready to fall over.
I know. We are so tired.
I don't see any sanding in the future. Anyway, that's kind of our podcast. Do you guys want to do a tool of the week, or you guys want to do a pillow of the day?
Pillow of the
Grinder.
day. What's that?
Grinder.
All right, grinder.
Jen wants to
Tool
do
of the week.
Jen's tool of the week is
The grinder. Grinder.
grinder.
The grinder. Definitely the grinder.
Grinder's fun.
It was very zen.
It's so easy to just meld into.
Pretend somebody wasn't watching you do it. What did you do with the grinder?
So we're removing the rust off of some of what we're doing with the grinder is that we have a wire brush attachment to it, and we are removing rust from the steel parts and removing some of the old paint that we have put on poorly on the roll bar on the outside, on the roll cage. It sticks on the outside of the vehicle. It is very zen to go into it. It's you can easily just fall into it and just enjoy it because it comes off so quick. So I would say that's definitely Jennifer's tool of the week. I thoroughly enjoyed the grinder when I was working on the cleaning up some old rust so I could make room for weld tacks on the sway bar underneath. So I was really enjoying that with the actual grinder piece. My tool of the week is the pressure bleeder for the brakes. I love that. It actually has a container that you put a lid that feeds into a bottle, much like when you see a weed sprayer, like a pump sprayer. So it goes in that. You add pressure into the brake reservoir where the brake fluid goes, and then you go around with a second container, and it is almost like a little valve, like a little nipple thing that goes over where that little 7 millimeter outlet is for the brakes. You apply it on that, you loosen the nut, and it just does the work for you, and so quickly. And you run it until you see a change in the brake coloring. Brake fluid coloring is one way of doing it, or just to take out enough fluid, just enough fluid that you think is good. But it just, oh my gosh, it made that job so much easier, so much faster. And that was something that was out of Randy Duckworth's, our new mechanic, came out of his stockpile of fun things, and it's a little bit of a loner. Thoroughly enjoyed it. So definitely my tool of the week.
Okay. Jennifer, why do you like this grinder so much?
Vicki just told you. It's zen. Just get in there. You start doing it, and it comes off so easy.
Mm-hmm.
And you just feel like you're accomplishing a lot.
Yes.
So apparently in a prior life, both Vicki and Jennifer were dental hygienists in their past, and they liked cleaning teeth with brushes and things like that.
We like instant gratification is what it is when it comes to working on the cars. We want to see something done and not just sit there sanding for hours. We want to see it, just bang it out and see results.
So instant gratification. That's why I'm here.
All right.
Okay.
Wrap it up.
Apparently we're done.
I am beat. I am so beat. I am so tired.
All right. Have fun, everybody. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Dominating with Dawson.
So, Ben, Vicki had this great question she wanted to ask you. And in my head, I'm going, well, I'll tell you first the question. She wants to know what you're thinking for pre-race thoughts, in the race thoughts, and post-race thoughts. And to my mind, I said, knowing Ben, he's going to be like, I don't think, just drive. But somehow we'll get around to a turn at VIR. But Ben, what are you thinking about your thinking process, and or maybe what your thinking process should be or could be?
Sure. You're right. I'm 100% guilty of just rolling up the track and hitting it without putting a lot of thought into what I'm doing. But you know, when I do it, when I'm thinking about pre-race, I'm excited about the fact that I'm going to go to the track and get to do the one thing that really kind of lets me cut loose without thinking about anything else. I kind of get into my flow state. I'm excited about the fact that we kind of get to go experience the pinnacle of my existence. So that's sort of what I'm usually thinking about. You know, if it's a car that I'm financially responsible for, or I'm the person who's in charge of making sure it's all wrenched up and ready to race, I'm probably thinking about the checklist and other things I've got to do to still make sure it's ready. You know, when I roll up to the tech line, I probably still got 2 or 3 things like I'm gonna be slapping numbers on or decals on in the tech line. So there's always for me a running checklist that I've built going into an event. I hate to admit to putting that much thought into it, but especially if it's a car that I'm responsible for making sure it's ready to race, then I'm going to make sure it's good to go. So, and my process for that is just beginning to get the car ready. And as I come across one thing, I think about 3 other things that need to be done. And I'll just go onto my list. And it's never an absolute list, but usually it's going to be pretty good to get me there. So that,
you don't think about, you know, like laundry or.
This is Ben.
Yeah.
I do. My checklist includes like, hey, this race is going to be cold and wet in the middle of October. How about I bring 3 extra towels and make sure I got a couple extra pairs like underwear. So, you know, I'm doing that sort of stuff. I'm coming to the track. I'm thinking about the conditions that are going to be around. Because also I'm slumming it every single time I ever go to the track. So it's not like I'm going, lucky to me just head to my trailer. Like we show up in an open trailer, and we're lucky to even put an easy up. So usually I'm thinking about how the weather's going to affect my body. So yeah, I think about sort of all that sort of stuff. That sort of piles all into my checklist. But as far as like thinking about like I'm going to be driving a 113 horsepower Miata, you know, and the field is mostly comprised of this, and this, and I'm going to be on a left-hand only track. I'm not really kind of thinking at that sort of level of detail, but I usually just sort of adjust to that when I get there.
Vicki?
Well, my particular experience, especially going on a track, is I think about the track going on. Look at the track going on. As I start getting exciting, you know, but the tracks that I am not familiar with, and especially the scariest one that I had ever driven had to be Laguna Seca. And my in-thought racing was the F word a lot. Yeah. As I was hitting every turn.
Fantastic.
Well, let's just say it was oh crap, oh crap, oh crap, oh crap, oh crap.
So can you
trying to calm myself down.
Right. But so what particularly was prompting you to say that? Like, were you going in and trying to think like, crap, I'm too fast. Oh crap, I'm too slow. Oh crap, I'm in the wrong place?
Actually, it would probably have to have been the corkscrew. The corkscrew, every time I hit that corkscrew, because it's almost, when you first hit the top of the peak, it was almost kind of going in blind, and then it dropped off.
Yeah, you are, yeah. You have no idea where you are, right?
And
it's dead blind. It's not almost blind.
Yeah, it was absolutely frightening as I was driving this thing.
That's so funny. That's crazy, because to me, I did the corkscrew a few times, expecting that to be the highlight of every lap, and like I did it a couple times. I was like, this thing's like a speed bump to the fun parts of the track. So I completely started ignoring the corkscrew as soon as I got there.
Right. Well, after a while, I started getting better with it. Of course, it was also the vehicle that I was driving. Also, it was a front wheel, something I've really never driven before, sure. And it was a very hard car to handle for me. Super so nice. It got better. But I have to say that it probably is not the place to learn how to drive an unfamiliar car.
Sure.
On a track that is equally as scary. I don't think that I would do that again.
The one time I got to race at Laguna Seca, this is me after me owning a Miata for years and years and being pretty good at kind of tuning on the Miata. the one time I got to race at Laguna Seca was in a Miata that was like the same generation as mine. So like there was no leap in learning as far as learning the car. So I can completely relate to having to show up in a place like that. Learn a whole different style of car and a new track.
I think I would be much better if, like I said, if we had our own cars, being familiar with how that car handles versus just sometimes the arrive and drives. So you know, they're tricky. They're tricky.
Yeah, definitely can be. I've been there.
All right, so you're in your race, you're thinking. What about after the race when you first get out of the car?
I'm sorry. I didn't know we were already through with the thinking in the middle of the race.
No, we're not. I just it got quiet, so I keep going.
I was pretty good. You were like, I have stuff to say about what I think about in the middle of the stint, like while I'm driving. So like,
okay.
Vicki was like, oh crap, yeah, this is terrible, blah blah blah. I definitely have plenty of those feelings when I'm in a car, but usually I think my driving is pretty consistent, so I'm not usually like focusing on like I need to brake here and this sort of thing. But just generally, sometimes if the car is not a joy to drive, or it's not handling as well as I hoped it would, or if it's too hot, or if I'm just in a crappy mood, you know what I mean? If I'm just salty that day, it could be any number of things. But like I'll definitely we'll keep a clock somewhere in the car, even if it's like a Velcro, digital wristwatch, Velcroed onto a roll bar somewhere. We usually have some sort of way to tell what time it is and how long you've been in the car, which usually ends up being miserable for me because I drive and think like, especially if it's a stint that's just not any fun, you're just driving. And I should clarify, not any fun is still 100% more fun than being at work or having to have somebody talk to you out in public that you want to talk to. So still very, very fun, just not the ideal of what you hoped for. So you're whining about working in a pie factory. But, I find myself getting sort of relatively miserable in a stint, and I will let myself look at the clock. And I think, like, I've been out here an hour and a half. I got here 2 hours. Surely it's been an hour and a half at this point. I'm looking at the fuel's going, and I'm looking, I realize it's only been a short amount of time. So that's my thing. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Why am I doing this? Like, I know how to drive. Like, why am I showing up here, showing up, doing endurance racing over and over again? So, yeah, there's definitely times where I hit malaise. I'm like, what the hell's going on here? I just want to get out. I mean, I've never pulled in early, but also I've thought about it.
I know that when when I'm racing, and especially, again, the tracks that I'm way familiar with, very comfortable on them. I pay attention to fuel, pay attention to my time, although I want to start doing that less. Actually, I think I would be very comfortable if the timer was taken out of the car.
Yeah,
and not worry about fast lap.
I'm not looking at a timer ever usually myself.
But sometimes I kind of get in a groove and I kind of get like this, a hum song or an earworm song in my head. And it just kind of helps me kind of go into the turns, kind of brings the adrenaline down a tiny bit.
Sure.
The over adrenaline, and just kind of get into a chill zone and start driving. But still paying attention to where my turns are, looking ahead. That's the other thing I'm always trying to do, is remind myself to do things when I know that I'm doing things wrong, like not looking ahead, like trying to snap myself out of a zone if I get too comfortable in a zone. Sometimes you have to keep reminding yourself as a new driver to do these things.
You have to remind yourself of the stakes every once in a while, right?
Right.
Because it's easy to kind of zone out, like, all right, I'm just nailing this. And all of a sudden, somebody comes zooming by that you weren't expecting, or you come up on a really slow car, like, okay, wait, we could all die doing this. But yeah, but you're right. There's some value in hitting a rhythm and kind of getting in a routine, because the more of that kind of stuff you do, the more it just becomes muscle memory. The more all of the stuff that you were worried about, the first few HPDE events you did with like the blocking and tackling, like the braking, where to turn in, where to shift the gear. Once you get into the flow of race traffic and you're having like, I gotta dodge this guy, I'm trying to pass in between these two guys. Like once you start doing all that, hopefully all the blocking and tackling, shifting and steering is muscle memory at that point. And definitely race traffic will help you get there, but it's all just seat time.
Yeah. And I think usually in the first part of the race, I'm like I said, I'm usually talking myself through what needs to happen, and whether I did something wrong, I kind of mentally tell myself, okay, I could do that better the next time around, to remember to okay, instead of slowing down at the 3, maybe I should, do a hard brake at the 2 and start, kind of going in a little bit better, knowing that I did something wrong, going, but try not to beat myself up over it at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. Like so in your example, so maybe you that in your instance, you braked at the 3 marker, and you found yourself still having to like drive up to the apex. You're like,
Right.
I broke too soon, and I'm still going to drive up to the corner. So that's a good realization to have as a developing driver, to realize like, I put this input in at the wrong time. I need to adjust my timing. So here's a good rationalization to say, all right, that seemed pretty early, and that was the 3, so I'm going to try the 2. Your answer may still end up being that you're in a car that's not carrying enough steam that you could brake at the 1 or after the arrow.
Right.
When I drove a Miata with good R-Comp tires on it at VIR, I could brake after the arrow on the backstretch, like after the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 arrow. After that, I would brake and I would still be fine. So just completely car dependent and experience dependent, and that sort of thing. But yeah, you want to make adjustments and be adaptable as you learn the course and learn each turn. It's all fluid as you go along.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, to the surprise of absolutely no one, I overthink all of this. So
I'm not surprised one bit.
No, I don't think any of our listeners should be. But so before I go to the track, I actually have a document where I will break the track down turn by turn by turn, exactly what to do, where to do it, what should be the key focus areas of the turn. Is it trying to hit the apex, or is it trying to maximize in speed or outspeed or whatever it is, whatever the goal.
What's your source material for you? If you've never been there, where do you find a guide that tells you like, here's where I need to hit the gas? You do some Ross Bentley track maps or something like that?
So I do a survey. So sometimes I'll do the Ross Bentley track walks. Sometimes I'll do the Racers 360 track walks. There's another one. Mansell's son, I forgot the name of his
that's funny. That's not actually Nigel Mansell's son, but yeah, I know who you're talking about. His name is Mansell. He puts out great videos. They're unrelated.
He does, and I think it's like 61 Racer 61 or something like that.
Yeah.
That's not Mansell's son. I always thought it was. All right, well, whatever.
It's not. I looked it up because I was like, this guy's so good. He's got to be related to Nigel Mansell. I went and looked it up. I was like, never mind.
All right, well, I thought he was, so it kind of made sense if he was. Well, sorry, sir. I didn't mean to insult your father. But those are kind of my 3 go-tos, and then sometimes I'll look for others. So
great sources, yeah.
What I'll try to do is I'll try to incorporate what they're thinking, and then I'll also try to incorporate a little bit of iRacing just to see it and feel it a little bit. And then when I'm in the car, I don't have to think about it anymore. I can kind of react to the traffic, react to the conditions, react to my car, because sometimes my car, I know this is going to come as a shock to everybody, sometimes our cars aren't perfect when we arrive at the track. I mean, I know you've never had that problem, Ben, but
try not to.
Yeah, it's not the goal, but sometimes you get there.
Yep.
And then the one that I'm really looking forward to is what about after you get out of the car? Is there any kind of review?
So let me go back real quick to what you said. So you're able to internalize a bunch of outside sources of people like, all right, this track, here's a sort of some track guide information. So you can internalize that and immediately apply it to what you're experiencing on track. Because I think that's novel. I haven't heard a lot of people say that they can really do that.
I didn't say I could do it. It's more of I know what I should be doing.
Right. But it gives you a guide where you feel like, okay, I'm applying this directly to this course, and I feel more comfortable going in. So it gives you comfort and consistency going in. Right?
Yes.
That's awesome. I haven't heard a lot of people say that they can do that, but I haven't been listed very well either. But yeah, it's really cool that you can do that. That's good to know.
Well, I just kind of approach wise, I think if I don't have the time to do that prep to go to a track, I don't have time to do the race. So I have to make time.
Right.
And the whole team has access to the file, and the whole team is able to review and see this. Does anybody look at it? No, but it's there. And it's also up on our website too. But and I do that track by track by track by track. And as we go, I try to update it with what we see with our car, because sometimes if Dion's got a guy racing an LMP car, he may break at the 3.5. Right. Whereas, for each of our cars, it may be at the 2 or it may be at the 4, depending on how good or bad our brakes are and how fast we're going. So, and we can kind of sit there and say, well, in the race truck, brake at the 4.
Sure.
But don't do a threshold brake. Do like a smooth kind of calm brake, and that way you don't upset the car. But in the Miata, you may be able to take it into the 2. and just stand on it because it doesn't care.
Right.
So, and that way we kind of get an idea, and then we can communicate amongst the team. So that's kind of my goal.
Yeah, it sounds like a good idea. You sort of build a reference database, right?
Yeah, and everything gets thrown into a, when the rain comes or when it's really cold or really hot, things move. But as you hopefully do these things year after year, you start to kind of understand. It's like, hey, in the rain we do this, in the heat we do, maybe we take a little air out, or maybe we move.
We got a spring race coming up at Sears Point, and it always rains in the spring at Sears Point. So you build some sort of tribal knowledge like that too, as far as the places you frequent, right?
Yep. But then what about when your stint's done? I mean, you do a little bit of talking to the next driver when you get out, I'm sure, and say, hey, the car number 23 is an idiot, or the
yeah, totally, yeah, definitely. You give all the warnings you can think of. You give to that next driver, because hopefully you're going to drive the car again later that weekend. So you want them to know everything that you learned, right? Yeah,
exactly. So I mean, the one that sticks out in my head is when we were at Road Atlanta in the cold. It's 34 degrees and raining, and I can't remember if it was Vicki or Mental getting in the car. I said, now listen, when you're going up the hill after turn 1, it's a rainbow. It just,
thanks.
It is just covered in oil.
It's a whole buffet and note.
Just don't go heavy and hard in there, because you were going to end up in the woods, not on the side of the grass, not in the wall. You're going to be in the woods. And, and I think it was Mental, he's like on the radio going, holy cow, it's a huge rainbow. So it was, interesting. But is there any kind of post-race or post-stint review that you kind of go through, or maybe somebody should go through?
You go first, Vicki.
I don't know. I'll let you go first.
All right.
Way to pump.
This is going to be not a huge surprise, but unless something went really bad, I just jump out the car like, that was great. But as far as our own local team, we'll talk about how things went. We'll talk about drivers and improving, or things that we liked that the car did or didn't do. We've had a couple races that we were unaware that our rear brakes weren't adding anything to the effort. So we had a couple races where some of our post-race review were like, man, the brakes didn't feel like anything like the test day. So some of that kind of post-race analysis is good. But also our team did that post-race analysis and then forgot about it to look at the brakes. So I think we did another race where our rear brakes weren't doing anything. So yes, definitely a serious, cogent post-race debrief can do a lot for your team. It's something that smart people do.
Yeah, I can say that our team doesn't do post-race briefing. We really don't. Usually it's a bit chaotic when people get off the track, and it's usually because something has happened to the car.
You're trying to pack up and leave, right? You're trying to get home. You got school the next day.
Well, no, I'm just talking about even the first day.
Oh yeah, okay.
Stints and stuff.
Yeah, that was one thing that that we've been trying to make a point of having, but usually when you have, in our instance, that we usually have a lot of people, and a lot of moving parts and a lot of extra going on. It's not an issue, say for instance, if we just had one car and 4 people, but now when you have 2 cars, 8 people with family and teenagers and it's
what you should do, not what we do.
I know. Right. It has been a challenge, and it has been brought up, I know, at least twice, that we need to make a point of having a pre-race expectation meeting and then having post-race meetings.
Morning meeting.
Right.
But let's be honest with ourselves, those are kind of things that you achieve once you're a pretty well-developed team. Like, hey guys, let's have our pre-race devotional. Let's get together. Let's get our heads in here. Okay, we're so squared away. We've got an hour and a half for this. Let's who wants to do a homily? Nobody's. I mean, really, I don't know. At least for us in our team, we've got a bunch of us have little kids. We're lucky to even show up at the track at the same time. Most of the time we don't. Somebody's always coming in late, my flight came in. There's always something. So we're not as organized as we'd like to be. But that's the ideal would be to have a pre-post race debriefs where you talk about what works well, what didn't work. Maybe you tried something new that you thought was going to be dynamite. It just went off like a poop sandwich. So there's always stuff to talk about, definitely, and that's what smart, evolved teams do. And it's not the reality for all of us. Because a lot of us, this is our escape. The amount of time we get transporting the junk to the track, being at the track and just transporting it back and barely dropping it off is going to barely make me able to make it to work the next day. So I mean, so yeah, the smart way to do that is to be pretty disciplined and deliberate about that, but it's not always the reality either.
Yeah, we've had issues just trying to get some people out of bed on time.
Sure, yeah. The full spectrum in endurance racing. So if you're so involved that you're hitting on all cylinders and you're able to have like a calm debrief where you get the whole team together and everybody plays putt-putt, you light some incense and talk about how it went, great. That's not many teams that I know, but they're out there. That's the
They
ones who
usually
really
got their head in the car like right after the race, and they haven't emerged until like 11 o'clock at night.
Right. Yep. So it's a great thing to aspire to. It's not what we do. I wish we did.
All right. So we've all got some stuff to work on here, and we can get better with time. So
Absolutely.
all right. Thank you, guys. And then Vicki wants to do pre-race thoughts, in-race thoughts, and post-race thoughts. And in my head, I'm sitting there going, Ben, don't think, you just drive. So.
You know what? I say a lot of sometimes. Well,
I like that you think I think about anything. That's nice. Thank you for flattering me. That.
So my thoughts, especially at Laguna Seca, was the F word a lot.
Well, yeah,
as I'm driving, because I was scared half to death racing that racetrack.
Yeah, then we've got a lot to talk about with this one. I mean, this is a
podcast
for people who
I was racing it. I was still pushing through, but
you were hating it sometimes. Right?
I wasn't hating it, but I could have been pulled from the track happily at the moment, but they kept me out there, and I'm glad they did. But it was.
Let's pretend we didn't start yet. Burning pot.
Sorry.
Yeah, we got stuff to talk about with that because I can relate. We can definitely roll on that pretty good.
Okay.